Welcome alumni and friends of UNB's Renaissance College. My name is McNeil. I'm the Executive Director of the Associated Alumni, and it is my great pleasure to be your host today. As we begin our conversation, I want to acknowledge that we join you today from a campus that sits on unceded and unsurrendered territory of Wolastoqey. The river that runs right by our campus is Wolastoq, and along which live Wolastoqey, the people of the beautiful and bountiful river. And we are very grateful to be on this beautiful campus today, and Kathryn in St. John, who you meet in a moment, also along Wolastoq, and here in this territory. So thank you for having us here. I am pleased to welcome three guests today. We have a member of the faculty, a current student, and an alumna joining us today to have a little bit of a conversation about where Renaissance College has come over the last 21 years. Hard to believe it's been 21 years already. Where we are right now, and a little bit about where we might head in the future as a faculty and an alumni community. So I'll start by introducing Dr. Carol Nemeroff. Carol has been the Dean of UNB's Renaissance College since July 2020. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree from McGill University and then went on to University of Pennsylvania to earn a Master's of Arts as well as doctoral degrees in psychology. While her disciplinary training is psychology, her teaching and her research has always been interdisciplinary. I am going to consult my notes a bit more closely now because I do not want to mess up the stuff about her research. So Carol's primary research lies at the intersection of cognitive and health psychology and anthropology, focusing on clashes between intuitive and expert thinking in domains ranging from health perceptions to interpersonal relations. Her most recent work focuses on developing innovative ethics training that builds real-world ethical resilience by correcting for common cognitive pitfalls that arise in the face of complexity and emotional stress. Thank you so much for joining us today. How'd I do?
You did great, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Great, thank you. And representing our alumni today, we are so happy to have Kathryn Lockhart join us. Kathryn is the CEO of Propel, a technology startup accelerator that helps Atlantic Canadian founders start great companies right here in the region. She holds an MBA from Harvard Business School and earned her Bachelor of Philosophy in Interdisciplinary Leadership from UNB's Renaissance College. I believe quite early on, 2004, I believe was her graduating year. Kathryn has experience in growing the technology division of a global human capital management firm based in Toronto. She ran her own startup in Germany, and she led strategic growth for another startup in Europe. Back in Canada, she then served as Vice President of Corporate Strategy at Blue Drop Learning Networks based in St. John's, and then Vice President of Growth and Corporate Strategy at JVP Labs, a medtech startup focused on telemedicine. Kathryn is a regular guest speaker at events, and she is passionate about mentoring women in business. Thank you so much for joining us from St. John today, Kathryn.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
And we are all pleased to welcome Ellen Petrie, a fourth-year Renaissance College student with a minor in biology. She's originally from Halifax, Nova Scotia, although both paternal grandparents did grow up here in Fredericton and went to UNB. During her undergraduate degree, she's become very involved in many activities on campus. We've chosen just a few to tell you about. She is currently the TEDx UNB 2021 co-chair, the Student Union Orientation Chair, and the UNB Spring co-president. She's very passionate about making positive impacts in others' lives, and she hopes to pursue that passion in the future through work in occupational therapy. Thank you so much for being with us today, Ellen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited.
So in hindsight, we should have had like a bowl of soup or a cup of tea or something to get this conversation started. I'll remember that next time, but we'll just have to pretend we are all holding a little cup of tea here before the conversation. So I think we wanted to start, Carol, by talking to you a little bit about our alumni often reflect on their time at Renaissance College by thinking about their internships, the domestic and international internships. I'm wondering if you can talk a bit about how that those hands-on internships impact student learning through the program.
Yeah, the internships are actually one of the features of the program that made me want to come here and be dean. I was blown away, to use the expert term, when I saw that there were not one but two required, and one of them was international. There are a lot of other community engaged projects along the way. I think students end up out in the community from the very first year. But by the time they get to the internships, the two 10-week full-time internships, they've got a lot of abstract theory and conceptual learning under their belts, and this is their chance to really put it to work in the world in a context that makes a difference to them. So a lot of the internships are themed around community-based projects related to sustainability or poverty, and the students are, at the same time they're doing this co-op-like experience for the Canadian internship, they're also doing a series of academic assignments and reflections, which means that back and forth between theory and hands-on makes for an entirely different kind of learning. And my cognitive psychology self says this is metacognition, and it's what takes your learning, it makes it front and center and intentional and usable and transferable in the future. When it comes to the international internship, this is something that there is no substitute for. Students are plucked out of their habitual, their familiar context. They're put into an unfamiliar environment for 10 weeks, and there's no better way to learn to see the world through different eyes. They learn cultural patterns, they learn about difference, they learn to accept difference without needing to try to change it or think of it as wrong. And when they come back, they're different. They're simply different. And again, this is accompanied by a series of reflections. So aside from that learning, which is so important, this also looks fantastic on a resume. By the time you graduate from RC, the resumes that I've seen blow most other graduates' resumes out of the water, just in terms of the nature of the experience they can list. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Kathryn, from an alumni perspective, listening to Carol talk about that, did it resonate with you from your own experience?
Absolutely. I must say, Carol, I can't believe you've only been the dean since July of 2020. At your descriptions, she's so accurate in her description of that international internship in particular. I had the opportunity to go to the Dominican Republic with a number of individuals. We were partnered with the YMCA at the time, and it was a very impoverished experience. So it's not Dominican Republic with beaches and resorts. We were inland, living in a very incredibly impoverished situation where we didn't always know where our next meal was coming from. We got to see really have a mirror of the world, the real world held up in our face that was completely new to all of us that were on this experience. So the reflection part that Carol, that you spoke of, was pivotal in actually internalizing that experience. What did it mean for me? Because it's all a big culture shock. There's no getting around that. But that culture shock, understanding what's happening, what does this mean for me in the next step of my journey? It's at an important stage in a Renaissance college student's journey. And for me, it's what inspired me to apply to Harvard at the end of it. When I was able to see what happened in the real world, not, outside of the beautiful Canadian borders we live in, and how can I make an impact? How do I lead a life that's going to serve others in a way that I had never seen before? Lots of danger, lots of, despair, lots of, real struggles, even with just infrastructure. So I thought, gosh, if these folks that I'm living with in the Dominican Republic, their hope is to try and escape their country, and I live in Canada, that I'm going to apply to Harvard, and the worst they can say is no. But I'm already given a privileged position to be able to apply, just recognizing that that's an opportunity I have very, very easily to apply. And Carol, like you said, I had a very strong resume because of it, and was the youngest person, I've been told, the youngest person ever accepted to the business school, straight out of Renaissance College because of it. So those international internships are wonderful, and it's so exciting to learn how they've continued to evolve over the years.
Yeah. It's hard to listen to both of you talk about that without thinking that Ellen is sitting with us today and has been a student through COVID-19, and I'm not sure you wouldn't have been able. That would have happened before you went on an international.
Yeah, we were all set up and ready to go, and places picked and everything, but unfortunately wasn't in the playbook for me. But alas, I did pick up on a piece that I found really interesting that both you guys mentioned, was reflections in the internships. And I did go and do my Canadian internship. And I think a big piece of Renaissance College, even in the coursework and things, are reflections and being kind of forced to think about your learning. And honestly, without that piece, it's so easy to retract into yourself and kind of just go through things without really engaging with them. And I think the biggest piece of learning that I have gotten, and all my personal growth, has come from these reflections, even though they're not always the funnest things to do. So even though I didn't get to go on my international internship, I think I've been given the tools that when I do do things later in life, I will like be purposeful about reflecting on them. So I don't feel too hard done by.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you talk about all those reflections. I was a student at UNB when Renaissance College first started, and I remember some of the conversations I would have in my own residence. Some of the more interesting ones would be ones that I would have with students that were doing the program, because they were just, you know, they just thought about things in such a different way because of that teaching that was happening, that reflection that was happening. So yeah, that's great to hear.
Is it all right for me to address what we're doing this year?
Of course.
So,
thank
so
you.
for COVID, we certainly didn't want people to be robbed of the internship experience. We did just to get people through to graduation intact and in a timely fashion. We have allowed for course substitutions, and a number of students have taken us up on those. They're carefully chosen courses to have some international or cross-cultural awareness built into them. But Nadia Ladouceur, who's our experiential education coordinator, has also pulled out of her hat through some magic a set of domestically based internships that nevertheless have a significant cross-cultural aspect to them. So working with L'Arche Canada, across Canada, working with Under One Sky. And she's looked for residential settings so that students could have some version of that immersive experience. And that we're just starting it, but it seems to be going well enough that some of that flexibility may continue for future years.
That's incredible to hear, and it's no surprise to me that Nadia was able to come up with that. She's incredibly resourceful. So how, I'm wondering if, Carol, you can talk to us a little bit about how alumni have remained connected to the faculty and connected to students. I know you've been with us a short time. I've been in this role a short time and I've seen some of it, but maybe you could talk a little bit about how they've remained connected.
Yeah, we have several alumni who are actually mentoring students, and I'm going to consult notes here. So one wonderful alum right there on the screen. Give me a second to find it. So everybody knows Sarah King, who is our alum, who is the director now of experiential education for all of UNB, and so regularly interfaces with our students in that capacity. We have Patsy McKinney and Bethany Young, who have been nurturing ongoing mentoring relationships. They'll take current students into their setting and directly mentor them. Last summer, I checked in with Nadia about some of these. Last summer, in the middle of the pandemic, Callum Hunter developed a strong mentor-mentee relationship with Kate Ross, who is our graduate from 05, and that was Callum's Canadian internship. So there's quite a lot of that goes on. We love it when that happens. We've also ongoingly held student alumni mixers, and this year one of those unexpected silver linings to COVID was that we had to do the mixers virtually, and we had the largest ever turnout for the first one in the fall. I think there were 73 people present, and the alums themselves were delighted to see each other. So we had a follow-up. Yeah, there's quite a lot of it.
And we did include tea in that one. So
Absolutely. we sent tea bags for that one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It was nice to hear you mention Patsy McKinney. So when I was talking earlier about some of the conversations I had in residence, her daughter Josie would have been someone that I lived in residence with and really enjoyed a lot of the conversations that we had. So nice to hear that connection.
I'm discovering it's a very small world.
It is. Yeah, it is. So now that there are 21 years of RC alumni out in the world, can you talk to us about how you see them, and so that by extension Renaissance College, making a difference in communities and around the world?
Well, we're having our 21st anniversary celebration in September. So this was my call to go through our list of alumni, which I regrettably have not memorized. But I was astounded to see what people are doing. I mean, we have a stellar example of making an impact in the world joining us today. We have, let me see, Jason Goldlist, who graduated in 06, has created an online platform which we used for our student alumni mixer called Venue. We have, I believe, a CBC journalist. We have a sustainability officer out in British Columbia. We have several people in government positions in Ottawa and across the country. We have some physicians. We have some lawyers. We have a Yale professor. The RC folks are everywhere, and they're making a difference everywhere. We also have people involved in land trust and in organic farming locally. So, and it's not only what our alumni are doing, it's how they're doing it. They do it with a particular signature approach, which is just and again, I'm new, but to me it looks like the capacity for thinking about things in a complex and nuanced way and an interdisciplinary way, it's different. It's different. It allows them to be more creative and to bring more stakeholders on board and to build more effective and sustainable solutions.
Yeah, that's encouraging to hear too, because I think many RC alumni also go on to be in sort of policy roles or legal roles, and so being able to make changes that are going to impact a lot of people is really helpful from that perspective.
I find that even if they're not officially in policy roles, they end up impacting policy.
That's right.
You see, that isn't working, it needs to be fixed, and you naturally move in to fix it. So almost regardless of the job title, I'd say a lot of them do policy.
Yeah. Kathryn, have you been able to stay in touch with some of your friends that you made at RC? What do you see happening around you?
Absolutely, and I have to mention 2 of my siblings also went to RC. So my sister Anne was in the class after me, and she's been involved in tech companies, cybersecurity companies. She's made history in her role in the military reserves as a major in the infantry. She's based in Ontario and now has my brand new nephew. I talk about him like that. So, and then my brother's completing his residency in family medicine in Saskatchewan. So my siblings alone, and we have another sister who's a nurse and went to UNB as well. So she's familiar with RC from our lens, but some of the other folks that I continue to be in touch with, and Carol, to your point, it's a small community. I continue to meet people even as I come back here. I had a chat with Brent McDonald, who was in the very first class last week, and we have a call set up for tomorrow. And we're just sort of reconnecting as we sort of fall into each other's communities again. And it's definitely this bond. I mean, I often compare it to everyone, perhaps I shouldn't say this out loud, but everyone's very familiar with the St. FX, the X ring. I feel like if you went to Renaissance College, though, it has the same impact, the same effect. If you find it out, we don't have a ring that has that brand recognition. But I have met a number of people who have been in Renaissance College that I've been able to connect with. And because you went to Renaissance College, it's an automatic win. You're like, oh, great, let's chat. So there's been a real variety of individuals, as Carol, as you mentioned, from physicians to lawyers to my roommate, Caitlin Cooper, who's working with this transportation organization in Vancouver, making a huge impact there, off to fashion school for some folks. Like it's all over the map. And I think the education and the focus on leadership itself lends itself for people to explore their passions. So I love that there's not one result, one career trend that comes out of Renaissance College. It is hugely varied. But the theme, that underlying foundation and leadership, sets us up for success in that niche that we've chosen and that path we've chosen to follow. So it's always a pleasure to meet fellow Renaissance College alumni and Ellen, current students, and yourself, because we have that leadership bond. We don't have the ring, the matching ring that lets us see it from across the room, but it's definitely a very cohesive group of individuals that are always happy to talk to one another when they know they're RC alum.
That's a nice connection to what we're going to do next, Kathryn. So we asked some of our alumni to submit questions to us that if they were here in person, that they could ask Ellen and Carol. And so I think since you're representing alumni today, you are going to ask some of those questions. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
I sure am. I'm excited to represent alumni, and I'll start with the first question. Has Renaissance College, have the course offerings changed over the last 21 years? And do you feel they should change in the future?
That's a great question. Again, I've been here 1 year, not 21 years. So I'm not sure about the first few years. But some things have not changed. And those are the things that are really the heart and core of the college. The small class size and the cohort model and the focus on experiential and interdisciplinary education have not changed. And as we move forward into our next 20 years, there is no plan to change that. That needs to be protected and nurtured because I think it's a very precious thing. Having said that, the course offerings themselves, there have been a number of changes, some before I got here, some continuing, and some that I hope to bring about shortly. And several of these have been at the specific request of the students. Hang on, I'm going to just look at my notes because there are a bunch of them. Right, so we've made the specific course requirements more flexible so that students get more electives, RC electives. That has as a side effect, a desired side effect, that it creates a little bit more room in the upper division classes, the upper year classes, to allow people from our minor and certificate programs in. Because one of the bits of feedback was students adore the cohort, but they'd also like to meet some other students too, and not in classes that are typically huge as they are in many of their minors. One of the new electives is being taught by Thomas Mengel, and it's called Foresight, and that's borrowing from the field of future studies, which allows people to learn to identify and forecast trends. So I'm going to be sitting in on that this summer. Another that was at the request of students is a new course in research methods and paradigms that's going to start a year from now, and we'll be folding in a module on indigenous research methodologies, which is sort of cutting edge in the field and very, very important as a very different approach to things. We're just starting work on developing an honors pathway, once again at the request of students, because why not? I'm going to be teaching the first ever pilot course, Ethics in Leadership, in the fall. And hopefully that will become a regular offering. And when things allow and get back to normal and we have regular rotations again, I'm hoping to bring in courses as well on conflict resolution and group dynamics. But the most exciting change that's coming up is in our 21st year, or possibly it'll be the 22nd, we're going to be launching a Master of Leadership Studies degree. So there will be an accelerated pathway into it for our undergraduate students, obviously, but we'll also be able to make an RC approach available to more people at different levels.
I feel like I might send some of the founders that are in Propel into the master's program at some point. So that's it's very exciting to hear about the evolution of the master's degree. So congratulations on that. Yeah.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. We'll look forward to having them.
Yeah. we talk a lot about, because I work with young tech companies, and we actually talk about helping founders transition into leaders and how important that evolution is for them to start and grow companies that make an impact in our region. So there's alignment on so many levels, but would love to point some founders in your direction because the curriculum is splendid, obviously.
It is, and we're planning to offer a core set of offerings and then have optional concentrations. One of those optional concentrations is likely to be TME, Technology Management Entrepreneurship. So there may be.
Yes, and that's a wonderful program. So that's very good to hear. Yeah. Can you talk, and I've got a few more questions, Michelle, if you'd like me to, from the alum, if that's okay. Perfect. Carol, can you talk about how many students are currently enrolled, and can you speak about the enrollment trend over the past few years? I know you mentioned nice small cohorts, but is that still what you've seen over the years? And I know you're 1 year in, but thought we'd ask anyway.
No, it's well worth asking, and I did look up the numbers. So because of the cohort model and the accelerated 3-year model, we've, and although not all students finish in 3 years, some choose to do 4 years. So we've generally had a total cohort for the college of about 85 students. And that's been very regular because we don't take more than 25 to 30 students a year. And there are no plans to change that. There were a couple of years where we got almost double the usual number of admissions, and at that point people began talking, this is before me, about the possibility of adding a second cohort, not doubling the class size because that would destroy that sense of community, but bringing in a second cohort and then creating cross connections between them. We will probably move on that in the future after we've launched the master's degree. We did have a couple of very rough years for obvious reasons, and one of those reasons has been COVID, because the type of person who likes to come to RC really wants community and connectedness and presence, and that does not lend itself well to online learning. So although I've seen tremendous creativity, we've done a lot online. I attended a holiday bake-along online that was put on by the Student Society, and it was great. But it's not the same, and so I think at this point we had a very small incoming class. We're at 76 students right now, but our enrollments for next year look good. We'll be back up to about 25 students or more for next year.
That's exciting. I've met 3 just through, since being back in New Brunswick myself, met 3 current alumni. So Ellen, in addition to yourself, met some others. One helps us babysit our children. She lives nearby. And she's obviously attending classes virtually, but very much loves the program. So it's always a delight to meet the alumni that are currently there and hearing the consistency that has really, held true to RC throughout the years. I've got another alumni question for you. You spoke of this a little bit, but this question specifically is, what programs and projects have been implemented to support inclusivity?
Lots. Some of them informal and some of them more formal. So we have, in terms of the integrative forum that's throughout year one, that has become over the years focused on social justice and inclusivity. So that's a major theme. The community projects are themed around it. Oops, this is the wrong set of notes. Many of the community projects and many of the internships are focused on EDI-related activities. We also have now, I'm not sure how new this is, but we have an Indigenous student representative position that's now shared by 2 students, and they've been very active, very vocal with me, and it's been wonderful. There's a transition package that they're preparing right now for the next representative. There will be a smudge kit. We'll be looking into making some aspects of the space at the college a little more welcoming. There's a blanket exercise done by the McNeil Center, the MWC. I haven't had the pleasure of experiencing it because we couldn't do it this year, but we will be bringing that back as soon as COVID allows. And there's a 12-module Indigenous Canada course, actually, that I'm considering making mandatory for all faculty. And making it mandatory sounds very heavy-handed, but everybody is interested. If we can figure out the logistics, we may make that a unified college read. In terms of student body, I think we do very well in general on LGBTQ community issues. I think we do less well on some other dimensions. So to some extent, that is a task for our future recruiting. And we've started discussions about this. And I'd like to bring more international students as well into the student body. We send our students out, but it would be nice to bring our students in. Oh, and we've just begun work on an articulation agreement. There's going to be a 60-credit certificate in Indigenous leadership offered through Oromocto First Nations, and they've just reached out to us to ask if we can then stream the graduates of that certificate program into our BPhil and BIS degrees, and we're working on making that happen. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah.
Wow, that's very exciting. There's definitely no shortage of evolution in the programming in terms of inclusivity and tackling that head on. So that's really wonderful to hear.
We also have new hires coming because our founding faculty are retiring shortly, and this will be a primary consideration as we move forward with new hires. So.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm happy to hear it. And I have a question that, Ellen, you may be able to chime in on as well, but the alumni have asked, are student cohorts as tight as they used to be? And I'll leave it to either of you to, Kara, you'll be observing, and Ellen, you're in it in a COVID season kind of world. So what are you seeing within the cohorts today?
Yeah, absolutely. Even the question earlier when you were talking about like how we see RC changing the world or whatnot, I think you guys touched on it a little bit, but I found this year was particularly strange because my cohort, I would say like half of us are graduating and half of us are sticking around for another year just because of international internship and COVID and figuring out which path works best for everyone. And I think almost splitting us has almost brought us back closer together because it's emotional seeing everybody move on to the next phases of their life, and a lot of them are moving on into more studies, and every time somebody gets into something or they figure out a job or any accomplishment, somebody recently got engaged actually, it kind of feels like a family. It's like a win for everybody. Everybody's so excited. And because we were separated, I think everybody's even that much more encouraging and like that much more engaged, and like because we were lacking or like missing everyone, everybody's that much more open on social media and in group chats and all of this stuff to like say congratulations, pat on the back. And another one of our another person in my cohort is actually going to be the valedictorian for this year's graduation. And again, it was like the entire cohort won. It was so exciting. Yeah, so I would say my cohort is definitely very close in the best way. So I think people are as close as they used to be.
That's so good to hear.
Yeah.
Carol's going, whew, thank goodness.
Yeah, no, really. But I've heard this a number of times from a number of people, and I feel like it could easily have gone differently, but the students have pulled together to ensure that it didn't. I mean, the staff and faculty are trying to help, but the RCS, the Student Society, has just been incredible. And you have pulled together to make this something special. I think what happened is everybody stopped taking it for granted.
Yeah.
And so now it's seen as really a precious thing.
Yeah.
We will be trying to build in opportunities for people to connect physically, if we're able to the anniversary celebrations too.
Yeah, oh my goodness. We're already planning a reunion, my cohort, so big things.
Now I have to ask, does that reunion involve the traditional soups on and tea drinking? I know that needed to pause during COVID season, but is that something that you've still seen at Renaissance College?
I definitely want that to come back. I will be there. Actually, somebody in a course this year called Images and Insights, for one of our projects, you had to post up a big image and it had to change your perspective in some way, and they decided to post a big image of Soups on Maggie Jean Chestnut. And again, I think it goes back to what Carol was saying about just not taking those things for granted, because when she presented it in class, everybody teared up and just wanted to get back to that. So hopefully the reunion will definitely have soup.
It saved me many lunches, that's for sure, when it was Soups on day. And you're sort of this poor student with no cooking skills having pasta and butter. So you would really look forward to Soups on day.
One of the things we'll have as probably a scholarship fundraiser for the anniversary is a Soups on cookbook. That will contain recipes from Soups on over the years. And also, we need all of our alums to send these to us, but stories themed around the college and Soups on. So the kitchen is still there. The tea bags are still there. The soup making preparation, it's still there. We just need to be given the go-ahead to allow for it. And in the interim, if we're not allowed to do that still in the fall, Nadia had the wonderful idea of we could prepare tea and coffee and hot chocolate and serve it to students outside at 4 p.m. either every day or once a week or something, to take the place temporarily of Soups on. But that will certainly be coming back. And that was the basis for our sending out those little tea bags to everybody who's going to attend the student alumni mixer.
So I have, Carol, you talked just a little bit, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot too much, but you talked a bit about some of the things coming in the future around the master's program, and I am in a privileged position of having recently heard you present twice recently on just hot off the presses, the Renaissance College Vision document. Yeah. Is there anything from that you wanted to highlight today that you haven't had a chance to, that you think alumni would be interested in?
Yes, we'll probably be calling on some of our alumni for one part of it. So in addition to starting up the collaborative master's program in leadership studies, we're planning to launch a speaker hub. And the speaker hub, it may be small, it may be big. I'm not really sure how big we'll grow it, and that will depend on what people want to do with it. But our inaugural speaker will launch the speaker series at the anniversary event in September. And then our hope is to have at least quarterly speakers, possibly eventually moving up to monthly, on themes of leadership writ large, broadly construed. And the goal of the speaker hub, the leadership hub, I misspoke, it's the leadership hub, is to connect. We have a lot of leadership expertise on campus, not just at RC, but they're isolated pockets. And so we want to bring those together, both for the creation of the master's degree, but also to create a bigger community so that RC graduates have other types of connections with the other units doing leadership type events. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that's a great chance for alumni to get involved, and yeah, wonderful. Thank you for that. So Ellen, you a number of years ago made a choice about where you were going to go to university and what you were going to study. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that decision to choose a fairly non-traditional program in leadership studies.
Yeah, right on. The reason I chose to come to UNB and Renaissance College was because of how community-centered and the intimate atmosphere that they have here. And I have a little bit of a story, because I actually went to a UNB event in Halifax, where I'm from, and they were doing on-the-spot admissions, and I had applied for the concurrent science and arts degree, and they were able to do that, and they're like, we don't usually admit RC students on the spot. However, the academic advisor, Josie Seeley, is here, just happens to be here, and she's one of the people that would have the authority to do that. So she can look at the extra things you submitted, while you go to the rest of the event, and you can chat about it afterwards. And obviously I was very nervous for on-the-spot admissions, and the academic advisor was there. I was in grade 12, I didn't know what an academic advisor was. And luckily enough, I was admitted, and Josie Seeley is one of the most pleasant people I've ever met, and she is amazing. And we were just talking about things that I'm passionate about. And I had done a fundraiser recently, and I'm terrified of heights. However, I had done a fundraiser where I rappelled down a building in Halifax, and we were just chatting about that, and she joked around about starting a rappelling club at Renaissance College, which I obviously did not do, but it just made me feel like I was instantly a member of the community, and that's something that I didn't get from any other university or any other faculty. And I was quite shy, and I lacked a little bit of confidence when I was 18 coming out of high school, so that sense of community just made me feel confident in my choice, and I am very, very glad that I made it.
I'm really glad to hear that Josie was one of the first people that you met. She's lovely.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
What a great person to have out there talking to students about coming to Renaissance College. Yeah. So, Kathryn, did you have any questions from alumni specifically for Ellen? Did you have?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. And Ellen, thank you for sharing that story. I think it's always so great to hear why is it that students are drawn to Renaissance College? So thank you for sharing that. Another question we have for you is, how do you think your leadership skills will help you? And I understand you're interested in an occupational therapy career. So how do you think those leadership skills will help you as your career evolves?
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of touched on this a little bit with the reflection piece and how valuable that has been. So I think that is going to impact all facets of my life, but specifically in healthcare and hopefully occupational therapy. I think, again, just the way of thinking is different. I also am minoring in biology, and I've learned lots of things there, but it hasn't impacted the way I think in the same way. So looking at worldviews and accepting that my worldview isn't the only right one, or etc. And again, policy, understanding organizational policy and what can and cannot be changed and how to function within organizations. The internships have been great for that lived experience. So I think it's really setting me up very well for occupational therapy and what I want to do, especially because healthcare is so diverse and you need to serve so many people, and that is what I want to do. So understanding the diversity of what I'm getting into will be super helpful.
I love that response, because I feel like the next step of your journey that you want to take. You have some clarity around that, and hopefully the leadership skills will help support each step of the way. It'll be a really exciting learning curve, and then as you take on that leadership role in an area where you're clearly passionate, it'll be really exciting to sort of watch you make that impact. So best of luck as you take those next steps, Ellen. And I have another question for you. You touched on this a bit, Ellen, but I love this question because it sort of speaks to the alumni wanting to really just check in. So the question itself is, how did COVID-19 change your experience over the past year, and how have you been coping? Really, check in, pause, how you doing? Because this is not easy. This moment in time that you're in was meant to be different. That, and it's shifted. And like you mentioned, it seems to have brought a lot of you together. But how is it feeling? Do you feel like you've been robbed of time or strengthened because of the challenges, or how's it going?
Yeah, first of all, it definitely has been hard. I don't think anybody thrived during online school, and I think that piece of things was definitely difficult. However, reflecting on COVID-19, and this is obviously just my situation, but it probably has changed the course of my life significantly. I honestly probably would be graduating and rushing through things. I think this has really forced me to take a step back and think about what I want to do, and with that is occupational therapy, because it wasn't until this year when I was actually working in community problem solving, a course at Renaissance College for Autism Connections Fredericton, that I was exposed to what occupational therapists do. And I am really passionate about that. And again, knock on wood, hopefully I get in, but it seems like a dream career, for lack of better words. And I think I would have rushed through, not gotten the prerequisites that I need to do to get into that, because I just would have wanted to graduate. So although it has been hard, and acknowledging that, I think it was good for me in a weird way. But yeah, and like Carol was saying, RCS has done a really good job of like trying to maintain the sense of community at RC. I think it would have been a little harder for newer cohorts who haven't already made a very strong connection with their cohorts. So I think I am lucky that I had that piece first and it was able to be maintained. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, keep it up. And I'm glad that there was a bit of a silver lining in there for you, like that forced pause of, yes, I'm going to actually, get all the prerequisites to take this step forward into something you sound like you're really passionate about. So as tough as it is, I'm glad to hear you're managing sound like very well overall, and that you've really overcome the challenges that were sort of thrown in your way. So we've got our fingers crossed that the next one, that COVID is hopefully part of our past, and two, the next steps in your journey are fulfilling and what you hope they will be.
It was really interesting for me to hear you talk about how you came upon occupational therapy, because it was the single most beneficial thing to my own son in his development. And before experiencing that, I had no idea that occupational therapists would be involved in helping children the way that ours did. And so a lot of hope there, knowing that you're going to go follow that path. It brings me a lot of hope. So it was definitely a surprise for me when I saw how impactful that could be for him. So can you talk to us a little bit, when we were doing your introduction, I talked about some of the things that you're involved in. Some of those things would be very familiar to our alumni, like orientation chair, but some of those are a little bit newer, like the spring program, which I think is incredible, but our alumni might not know a lot about it. So I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how you chose which things to get involved in, and also why. Like, why did you've got enough going on with your schoolwork, why did you choose to get so involved in UNB?
Yeah, right on. Actually, spring is the first thing that I got involved in. And coming to UNB in the orientation week, I am kind of introverted. Again, I mentioned I was shy. So I was not having an awesome time. I was very overwhelmed. I was missing home. I wasn't sure if I was going to meet friends. And during my orientation week, there was a Clubs and Societies fair. And I found Spring, which is a club that every Saturday you go to the YMCA for 2 hours and you're partnered with a youth with a disability in Fredericton, and you have an hour of gym time and an hour in the pool together. And it is amazing and so much fun. And I had done similar volunteering back home and I loved it. So I was like, oh my goodness, they have something that I know that I love here. Like, maybe this won't be the worst. Maybe I'll find home here. So I signed up for that and I made fast friends. Like, you were partnered with another person from UNB with your buddy. So again, I was able to meet people. And it was really that showed me that getting involved is so beneficial. And since then, it's kind of been crucial to my university experience, honestly. I've made amazing friends through my extracurriculars. And I think, honestly, equal amount of learning as in the classroom, especially for a leadership degree, has been in my extracurriculars and just working in teams. And orientation week is obviously a little chaotic sometimes, so overcoming unforeseen obstacles. And yeah, I just love it, and I would recommend anybody to just get involved with anything. That's the other thing I love about UNB, is that anything you're passionate about, you will find it, because I did not think there would be a volunteering opportunity like Spring. So yeah.
That is one of the things that is so reassuring to hear. I'm sure Kathryn feels the same way. So myself, as having been a student more than 20 years ago at UNB, just to hear that regardless of what's changed, that part of our DNA is still the same, that student experience. And if you want to get involved, you can. It's out there for whatever it is you're interested in. It's great to hear that's still happening. So I think I'm going to, unless there's any other questions, I think I'm going to end with one final question for all of you. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before I go there? Were you all good? All right. So this will be a surprise, because it was, I think, in a list of questions I was going to ask Ellen, but I'd like Carol and Kathryn to also think about it. So I'll get Ellen to go first. But just wondering if you can tell us, from your perspective, what's been the best part about being at UNB for you?
I think the best part about being at UNB was the intimate atmosphere that I talked about earlier. It started instantly when I was talking with Josie back in the Atlantica in Halifax. But like, it is extremely empowering for you to know your professors and get to know them and have genuine connections with them. And I don't think 18-year-old me 100% would not see myself in like the orientation share role. That would be too much responsibility, but so many people along my educational degree have been very supportive and engaging and excited to talk about things that I'm passionate about, and the whole thing has been hugely beneficial and created a lot of self-growth. So it's the tight-knit community and value of genuine connections that is my favorite part.
Wow, that sounds like exactly an answer I would have given about 20 years ago. That's great to hear that that's still the same. So Kathryn, you also graduated a little while ago, and you've stayed connected to UNB in a number of different ways. So you can answer the same question either from a student perspective or an alumni perspective.
Gosh, a lot of, Ellen, what you said resonates with me as well. I think it's a place and a time in your life where you just find yourself, and that community around you within Renaissance College. Also, you know, Ellen, I also minored in biology for a while. So you get to meet people outside of your RC bubble. I use bubble, that was a COVID word thrown in there, but outside of your RC community, but really having the support to find yourself. It is not so overwhelming in size that you're just a number. So you can reach out. The faculty are incredible. So the faculty at RC, the faculty up on campus are incredible to really help you take the right steps, those genuine connections. Ellen, I totally agree with that comment. The genuine connections to take the right steps forward, because it's a launch pad. Spending that time at UNB to find yourself, what is that next step? You know, I was lucky enough, I'm in my job today because of my previous UNB professor. So Barry Besant taught at UNB for years in the TME program and then went on to run Shad Valley, but he also went to Harvard Business School. So we connected last summer, and he shared with me that he was retiring, and he said, I think you should put your name in the hat to be the CEO of Propel. And I thought, no, but I trusted him, and the work that he was doing was so key. So it almost came full circle for me, where I met him, and then now that I'm back in New Brunswick and in a role that is an absolute dream job for me. But all along the way at UNB, I was supported even from my first Canadian internship by Susan Michaud. I worked at UNB, and you know, she was a pivotal individual in helping me understand the business world with very young eyes at the time, and was very encouraging. Just the encouragement alone has helped me develop the confidence and the wherewithal to dive into the business world without hesitation. And you know, now I'm in like I said, a dream role, but a lot of that came from the very deliberate support and genuine support from having spent time at UNB. And you see that a lot with alumni. I mean, my parents met there, you know, my whole family, all my siblings went there. So it has a big impact in our region. And it's an absolute privilege to be called a UNB alum. Love it.
Well, we love having you as part of the family too, Kathryn. You and your whole family as part of the UNB family.
Yeah, that's right. And I wouldn't be alone in saying that. There would be many families where their parents went there. Ellen, your grandparents met at UNB. You know, there's these wonderful stories that span decades and generations. So it's so nice to see that it's the traditions go way back, but the future is very bright in terms of looking forward with everyone that comes out of the university.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Okay, Carol, so you joined us in the middle of a global pandemic that we have not yet emerged from. And so your perspective is probably a little bit different, but maybe you can share what's been the best part so far.
It's actually less different than I would have expected.
Good.
What drew me to thinking about UNB was excellence and creativity. What made me say yes, aside from the sheer fabulousness of RC, was the community.
Yeah.
People are simply friendly, and they connect, and they know you. When an RC student is accepted, I write a personal note to each one of them, and it is a personal note, it's not a form letter. The same things that we do for our students at RC, everybody in the broader UNB community does for each other.
Yeah.
And so I can't even begin to describe how I've been welcomed here, in spite of the need for much of that to be virtual or through masks. It's been remarkable. There is a feeling of connectedness and family, and it's just striking and different. How we accomplish this at an institution of this size, I don't know. There's something magical going on there.
Really is, yeah. I could talk to all three of you for the rest of the day, but that seems like the perfect note to end on. So thank you so much for joining us today. I had so much fun, probably the best way to spend an hour I could ever imagine. So thank you very much to all of you. And for our alumni who joined us today, I hope that you enjoyed getting a little bit of a glimpse into Renaissance College. I think that you probably saw that it's very similar in many ways to the Renaissance College that you remember fondly, but also that there's some exciting things coming and some change happening as well. So we do hope that one day we can invite you back to campus, that you can head down to Maggie Jean and maybe have a cup of tea. But until that time, if you have any questions that you would have asked if you had been here in person today, please reach out to us, whether they're about UNB or Renaissance College. You can send them to alumni@unb.ca and we'll take care of getting some answers for you. We do just encourage you to stay connected with us. We love hearing from our Renaissance College graduates and love hearing the things that you're doing out in the world to make a difference. So on that note, I hope you all have a great day and thank you for joining us.